Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number 1514H603. The Bommer 1514 and 1515 are a series of double-acting spring hinges that are used on thinner doors. The big brother of the 1514, 1515 series is the 3029 series. That's intended for thicker, heavier doors. The 1514 is for doors that are 7/8 to 1 inch thick. And this happens to be an H model, which means that it is a hold open model. This roller that's here is what allows it to be hold open. And this is a 603 finish. That is a zinc plating that's on this hinge. So how this works is that the door obviously sits in this area right here, holding it a bit tipped towards you. Okay, so when you push on that door from this direction, that door is going to go out. It's going to come back, and it's going to go this way. Just like a saloon or cafe door would certainly operate. This operates in the same type of fashion, except that it is a more robust hinge compared to a gravity pivot that you might see. Bommer has a line of double-acting pivots as well. They're 7500 series items, and they're nice. They do certainly work. They do work on a gravity principle that when the door is pushed, there is a cam and lobe scenario that allows the door to raise up as it goes through its opening cycle, then lowers as it goes through its closing cycle. That's really not appropriate for, that's really not appropriate for a full-size door. You would literally use that on cafe doors, 30-inch tall, whatever the case might be. Now let's take a closer look at the 1514 series. It is for 7/8 to 1 inch thick doors. That's going to really be governed by how much room you have to fit a door inside of here. This is a non-handed and non-template sort of hinge. It's non-handed. The door is double-acting. You could install it this way if you wanted. You'll just flip everything over. I would put the hold open at the top. That's just the way it's shown. Non-template, that means that the location of these holes for the screws, they're in no particular position. There's nothing special about them. It's Bommer specific. Minimum door height is 38 inch and maximum door width is 18 inch, with a maximum door width is 18 inch, maximum door weight is 18 pounds. People will always ask, well, what if my door is 36 inch tall? That's fine. What they're really saying is the caliber of the spring is based on that size and type of door range. If you have an incredibly light door, you're going to find that the door might really cycle through really quick because of the strength of the springs. And if it's excessively heavy, you might find that the door will fall out of the opening, extending this a little bit, causing it to creep out of the opening. So you need to be well within that range, and you can obviously mitigate a heavier door by adding a hinge. But that's the general outline of what they're looking for. This is indeed made of steel. We know that because the magnet tells us that, but we know it because the 603 finish. That means zinc-plated over steel. Zinc-plated steel, that all goes together. And speaking of the finishes, you can do this in any of the finishes that you really need to, that you might encounter. Your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, nickels, satin polished, oil rubbed, prime coat, obviously zinc plated, bright black japanned can be done as well. Now moving further into the extended description, the door flange can be surface applied or mortised. Jam flange is surface applied. So the jam flange is mounted right to the face of the cased opening frame. Okay, it's not mortised at all. Could you mortise it? I suppose. That material is not very thick, maybe 60 thousandths. The door flange can either be mortised or it can be surface applied. It will just depend on how much margin you want between the edge of the door and the frame, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Easily adjustable spring tension, that is true. We're going to be able to talk about how to set the spring tension on this. Specifications of product may differ from what's being sold. Yeah, just be mindful to read what's there. That must be a reference to a potential typo in the manufacturer's catalog. Everything that's there applies to the hinge we're talking about. The hinge is sold per each, not per hinge. Pardon me, per hinge, not per pair. If you buy one, we're going to send you one, so be mindful of that. Okay. Now, there is a link below this video to the template, and the template is going to give you the basic dimensional review of the hinge. And I won't touch on all of these pieces at this time, except that what you're seeing in that top image is exactly the hinge just laid out like this. Okay, you would never see the hinge in this orientation. You know, the door would never operate this way. They must just be laying it out in front of you so as to go over the size. That jam leaf, they've got it basically 2 and 7/32, something in that range. So about 2 1/4. The height of the jam leaf, they've got at, appears to be 2 inch. Indeed. You know, in all the rest of the dimensions you can review there. They do show us the leaf thickness is 75 thousandths, not 60 thousandths, as I had said earlier. And the instructions are important because it allows us to talk about the sizing of the hinge. The sizing of the door as it pertains to the hinge and your opening. The link to the installation instructions do not cover that aspect. So let's jump in and talk about the template because it will give us guidelines in terms of the size. And what they're showing here is they're showing a single door is what they're showing. You can certainly modify those requirements to work in a double door application. The only problem with that is what will the B clearance be? You might consider you know, doubling that or adding 50% to the B clearance to allow 2 doors, depending on if they're square edge or round edge. If they're round edge, I would just use a B clearance for a double door. Let's take a closer look. So the bottom line is you need to, and I learned the very, very hard way once upon a time that Bommer hinges require an undersized door in almost all instances. You have to start with some dimension. There's likely something that you're obligated to adhere to, possibly a finished opening, or maybe it's a door size. Okay, but one of the two you're going to just stick with. If you have an 18-inch, well, let's be realistic, a 36-inch wide opening, and you're putting in a pair of these, you know, you're going to need to calculate your dimensions off of 36. That's your finished opening. So, and it's unusual because who has 18-inch wide openings? They should indeed give us some better information for double doors, which I don't see. I mean, you're going to use these in paired openings. So if you're, let's say you're dealing with 36-inch finished opening, and you can plane your door down to accommodate, or you've got a door, and you can't change it in size at all, but you're going to build the opening to suit. It might be a laminated door that you cannot just plane the edge off. So be mindful that you have to pick something and start there. So once you know what size you have to get to, you can then take into account what the hinge requires itself. So on the left-hand side, you need to have a 1/16 of an inch if you're mortising your door for the door leaf. Okay, a 1/16 of an inch, which is really just going to account for the distance from the back side of here to the wall plate, 1/16 of an inch. You're going to mortise that 3/16 of an inch deep, 0.187. And so your door is going to have a mini little notch in it, and it's going to just fit over it like this. Now that'd be a great way to go, because you only have a 1/16 of an inch on that side. If you're not going to mortise it, they need a 1/4 inch, and that's all of this. Okay, so automatically you can see, okay, well, I got a 36-inch wide opening. I'm doing 2 doors. I'm not going to mortise the hinge leaf, so I need a quarter here and a quarter here. So all of a sudden now your finished opening minus a half of an inch, and you're getting to the point where you'll divide that by 2 to get your net door width, but not just yet. Because you have to now determine what is your B clearance, which would be the dimension between the two doors. Now that's where it comes into another decision you have to make. Do you leave the doors square edge, or do you radius them? And you'll take note there that if you were to radius the doors, a round edge door, a bullnose is the top row of tile in your bathroom, just curved like this. But if you do a double bullnose, it's now called a radius. So you're going to radius the door. If you are, then you can have 1/8 of an inch. If you radius both doors, you can have 1/8 of an inch. You might make it 3/16, because I would imagine that when the door articulates, cycles open, cycles closed, cycles open, cycles closed, that it probably moves out of the opening ever so slightly. You know, so the door is not like this. It actually goes like this. A little bit, right? I would think it does. So you might make it a 1/16 of an inch. If you're going to not do that at all, you're going to need a 1/4 inch over there as well. I would certainly make it 3/8 of an inch if I had two doors that were going to act like this. So if we were going to make that 3/8, you've got 36 inch minus a 1/4 inch minus a 1/4 inch minus 3/8 divided by 2 is your net door size. Okay, so that's an outline of how you'll put all of this together. If you can radius the door edge, do that, because you'll have a tighter margin. And if you can mortise the leaf to the edge of the door, do that, because you'll have a tighter margin. It just is probably in your application. It doesn't matter if they're radiused or mortised, because the cash wrap on a gas station, who notices that? No one does. So, let's say you're literally doing a small door where you need to just scoot through. 1/4 here, done. Square edge doors, not mortised, finished. That's really what you're going to end up seeing. Now there's a reference, and if you're going to radius the door edge, you're going to need a big round over bit. And that radius is generally 1.5 inches, so that's a really large round over bit. So be mindful to decide if you have that tooling. It takes an awfully big router bit to do a proper round over, and they don't tell you what it needs to be. But 1.5 inch radius is generally what you're going to find. And I've seen people that just took a 3/4 inch radius and rounded that stuff over, and it works. It works fine. But a template pulled from the factory would show you 1.5 inch radius, which is a 3-inch round over, and that's a $200 plus bit. That bit was $200 in 1995. So be mindful of that. They do indicate a door thickness of 1.125 to 1.5 inches. That's because that applies to the 1515 hinge, the bigger version of this, thicker door. So when you're talking about Bommer double-acting spring hinges, the first question that must always be asked is, how thick is the door? Great. Then you go down to select your type of hinge, but then the size of the hinge immediately. Okay. If you have 1.5 inch door, they need to be pretty light in order for a 1515 to be if you have a hollow core 1 3/8 door, yeah, you're going to be in good shape. But after that, you're going to be into the 3029 series. So we've talked about how to size it, and if you have any questions on how to size your doors when you get your hands on this material, let us know. We'd be happy to go over that information with you. Now the installation instructions, and they are of course included with the hardware, they're going to start to refer to all these other pieces: your hold open keeper, your tension pins, your tension rod, your screws are there, all wood screws naturally. Okay. The upper left-hand area is where they define the parts that you're dealing with, and we have all the parts certainly. For every hinge that you order, you're going to need 2 tension pins. This client did indeed order 2 hinges, so there are 4 tension pins here. You need 2 per hinge. For every order that you place, you'll get 1 tension rod, at least 1. You don't need more than 1. For every hinge you order, you'll get a package of screws as well. For every hinge that you order, when it's an H version, you'll get the hold open keeper. So you've confirmed you have everything, and confirm you have everything. It is highly irregular for a client to not have enough tension pins. Bommer exerts a tremendous amount of energy making sure that the proper components are in that box, and they take the position that they are never wrong, and it is few and far between the instances where that is not accurate. So be mindful. Check your parts. It's all in there, or at least it is all in there. Step 1 is to release spring tension by turning perforated tension collars and removing tension pins. That would be appropriate if the hinge already had tension on it. These hinges don't. The tension pins are loose. There's no tension set on this. Step 2 is to do that preparation should you need it in your door edge. And this is a scan of an installation instructions that are dated 1990. So this hardware has not changed in 30 years almost. On a monitor up here, if that date had changed, it hasn't. So when you're looking at that hinge leaf, you can see that we've got what appears to be 2 5/8, or maybe it's 2 3/8. Yeah, probably 2 3/8 would be my guess. What they're doing on that door mortise is to allow the inclusion of the hold open keeper, okay? Because when that's installed, that's going to actually fit right behind here and require accommodation on the door leaf. So you're going to make your preparation, select your center line of where you're going to install the hinge, top of the door. They don't give you a guideline, but 5, 6, 7 inches top of the door down, something in that range. The bottom can be basically symmetrical, maybe a few inches higher off the bottom of the door than the top. So that's 2 1/4, and that 3/8 of an inch tall, 1/8 of an inch deep step that's going to be, it is indeed 2 5/8. 2 1/4 plus 3/8 is 2 5/8. 3/16 deep is the preparation that you're going to make in the door. Now, they don't indicate specifically that will be through the door, but it will be through the door. Those 2 steps, 3/16 deep, 2 1/4 tall, through the door. Another 3/8 tall, only at 1/8 of an inch deep through the door. Fasten door flange to door. So now what they want you to do is to get the hinge applied to the door itself. Okay, this is going to fit obviously into your 2 1/4, 3/16 of an inch deep recess. Okay, then in step 4. And by the way, we're only on the left side of the installation instructions. The right side is for non-hold open. Step 4 is to screw jam flange and hold open keeper directly to the surface of the jam. So you are going to locate the center line of your cased opening, locate the center line of your door. You're going to position this right onto your frame accordingly. There is the leaf, in terms of the placement of the hold open feature, is a little less than clear, but what they're showing you there is when you're going to take your hinge and extend your jam leaf, so that what they're showing you is this view here, just everything over here. You're going to take your hold open plate and it's going to sit just like this. Okay, so that when this all comes back together, it is positioned as I had shown it earlier, like this. So you're going to take that hinge, you're going to open it up, you're going to apply it. You're going to need to find your center line. You're going to mark your center line. You're going to need to be able to determine where you're placing the center line of this leaf in relationship to the overall center line of the opening. You can simply do that by measuring it. Locate your holes, pre-drill your holes, secure it, bring your hold open keeper plate, locate, pre-drill, and secure your plate exactly as shown. Just like this. That's how that's going to sit. Okay. Your door has the hinge. Now you're getting the door and the hinge on the frame. These are going to be relatively light doors, so you're probably just going to, have one person holding it as you are marking and laying it out and pre-drilling and then attaching. The step 5. Now what you have here is the door hung. You've done step 4 at the top and at the bottom. Okay, great. Now be mindful. Those doors are just going to seriously just fall out of the opening. As far as they can go, they're just going to fall out. You're not going to want that to happen, obviously. You're going to want to hold them taut on the jamb. At that point, you're then going to set tension. Step 5 says, place door in closed position, apply tension to each spring, and there are 2, this one and this one, and replace tension pins. Adjust tension as required. Do not apply tension past the 3rd hole of the tension collar, otherwise the light spring in this hinge will distort. It'll distort and you might hear it creak. If you hear that, it's too much tension. Absolutely. No more than 3 holes. So the way that this works with the tension pins, and I'm going to remove one from the package and be very careful to put it back in, is that when the tension collar is pointed towards the top of the door, you'll insert the tension rod into a tension collar and then turn it clockwise. Then into that hole right there, you're going to drop the tension pin. And you'll release it, and now I've got tension on that spring. Okay? You're going to do the same over here. It's just that simple. Take your tension rod, tension collar, turn it clockwise, drop in a tension pin. Now you've got tension on the frame leaf as well. And that's simply how that works. Then you continue to do it to such a point where you have adequate tension set on the hinges and your door operates accordingly. Set a couple of holes. If it's a pair of doors, which I'm sure it is, hold the one door out of the way and test your operation. Okay? Make sure that it doesn't work too aggressively or too lazily, returns to center correctly. Do not apply past the 3rd hole. We talked about that. I'm going to put a piece of tape back on that bag. And that concludes how to install this hinge. It is just simply the bottom line. So they don't talk about the hold open at all that I can tell. But basically what happens is it's going to look like this when the door's in the closed position. Well, that little hook that's there and this little roller, when that opens up, it's going to force the roller over that projection, that hook. It's going to force it over that, and that roller is literally going to just roll over the projection on this hook, allowing the door to then be captive like this until you pull it closed, and it's just going to snap over that. And the way that it really works is the setting and unsetting is obviously what's going to happen is this is going to separate a little bit. The door is going to come out of its opening because the roller doesn't move in and out. But as you continue, this is firmly on the jamb. But as you continue to do that, obviously this is going to spread, allowing that to get over that hook that's there. And that's how those work. Okay, great little gizmo. I see them all the time in your coffee places that have these these tiny little cafe-style doors, and they work great. Bommer has been literally making this material since the 19th century. Their name is utterly synonymous with spring hinges, especially double-acting hinges, to the point where a Bommer hinge, everybody knows what you mean by that. It's a double-acting spring hinge. When it comes to spring hinges, they have a full complement of single-acting spring hinges as well, so be mindful that they can sell you single-acting. They have a comprehensive offering of commercial, institutional hinges on top of all of that. They have continuous hinges. They have a variety of other hardware that you might want to take a look at, especially high-end lavatory hardware. There is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. And the last thing I'd like to point out to you would be the Bommer logo, and right above it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. Any questions on the 1514H and a 603 finish, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.